Morning, everyone, and welcome to this Net Zero Communities Forum with National Grid. My name's Kai Hoare. I'm from Regen. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with who we are, but we're a not-for-profit renewable energy centre for expertise, and our mission is to transform our energy system to be net zero. So as part of that, we've got a programme of support for community energy that we've been involved with for about 10 years now, working with National Grid for a lot of that. The bits that previously it was known as Western Power Distribution. So still the same people fundamentally, but yet now known as National Grid. So hopefully not too confusing for everyone. So yeah, we're really pleased to be putting this session on this morning. This is our last Net Zero Communities Forum of the year. So we really want to take the opportunity later this morning to focus on what you want to see from National Grid next year and how you want them to support community energy. There's been bits in the news this week. Ofgem's essentially set the budgets for all the networks, what they can spend over the next 5 years. So really key that we get your thoughts on how you want that to go towards supporting community energy, what sort of actions you want them to do. Because if you let them know, then they can sort of put that in their plans and in their strategies and support community energy from there. Really, so yeah, very much open to your ideas. I know in the news as well, recently sort of some rare positive news that it looks like onshore wind in England at least is back as a possibility. So, for example, if you wanted more support from National Grid to look at onshore wind again, then we'd be open to ideas like that. So yeah, we really want your thoughts on how you want to work with the guys at National Grid, and particularly Faithful, who's their community energy engineer, as well as some of the other teams that you'll meet today. So yeah, if we're just Prina, if we're just able to bring up the agenda quickly. So yeah, got a busy agenda for the next 2 hours. Really pleased that we're joined by Connie this morning from Croydon Community Energy, and she's going to take us through some of the lessons that they've had from their first year as a community energy organisation. I know we've got a sort of a mixture of community energy organisations on the call. I know some of you have been going for a number of years, done a lot of projects, but there's others who are just starting up, wanting to know what they can get on with doing right now and how they can start up projects. Sort of that are really relevant right now. So yeah, really excited to have Connie on the call from Croydon Community Energy, who's going to take us through some of that. And now, when you all signed up for the session, we asked you to pick what topic you'd like to discuss. We kept that pretty open, but from the sort of most popular topics, we've split those into 4. So hopefully there's something in there that you want to talk about, and we've sort of got experts in each of these areas on hand to answer your questions. So that's really the opportunity for all of you to ask the questions that you want to ask, and hopefully get some of the answers that you're looking for. And again, within them, just sort of we want your thoughts on what sort of support you'd like from National Grid around those areas as well. And then we've got a bit of a break, just an opportunity for everyone to go get a cup of tea and coffee. And then Kian, who is a connection strategy engineer at National Grid, is going to talk us specifically through some of the issues around connections, and then looking at how network reinforcement might change from next year. So there's big changes to look out for in the sort of network charging area, looking at how we pay when we're connecting renewables projects to the network, and there's some changes to look out for from April 2023 through Ofgem's a significant code review that they've done. So yeah, really interested to hear what Kian's got to say about that. I know connections is something that is a lot of community groups in particular struggle with. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from Kian on that. And then, as I mentioned, we really want your input on what you'd like to see from National Grid's net zero community strategy for next year. So my colleague Prina is going to be taking everyone through that. And yeah, we're, please do stick around to give us your thoughts and give us your feedback on this session as well, because it's that sort of input and feedback that we base future sessions like this on, and other things that the National Grid do in terms of community energy. So yeah, got a really busy agenda for the next 2 hours. Glad to see so many of you joining us this morning, and without further ado, I will hand over to Connie from Croydon Community Energy, who is going to talk to us about some lessons from them as a new community energy group. So yeah, over to you, Connie.
Hi, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I just wanted to start by saying thank you very much for inviting me to speak. As with most people in the community energy space, the more groups, the better. We've got, a collective power on issues, and we all share the common goal of wanting to help our communities save money and carbon. So it's just great to be able to share lessons learned from our group with everybody here today. And just to say, this is of course my own personal experience and of our group. So I can't comment on the situation for every group. It's dependent on whether you're rural, urban, the amount of people, etc. So yeah, just to bear this in mind. And next slide, please. So just a very quick run through. So I'm going to be talking a bit about me and my background, what is Croydon Community Energy, running through our timeline over our first year of existence, and then some do's and don'ts, which obviously aren't set in stone, but just some things we would recommend, and most importantly, bit at the end, and then just further contact details if anybody wanted to get in touch. So my name is Connie Muir. I live in South Croydon in London, and I'm the founder of Croydon Community Energy. I started the group because I wanted to combine my professional experience with my passion for helping our local area transition to a green and just future. I've been working in the energy industry for over 5 years now, coming up to 6, in a range of roles, from pricing energy contracts at an energy consultancy to working in security for smart meters. And my current role is as a project manager at an energy supplier. So bit of a range of roles in that sector. I went to school in Croydon and I live here now. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a borough in South London. And I'm proud to call it my home, which helps when you are doing these kind of projects, to feel really connected to the local area. I do believe that our area could be doing so much better in terms of carrying out its climate action plan and doing more in the local area. So I was keen to work out how I could help do this. I've also been involved in climate activism outside of work too. I run Croydon Climate Action, and I'm also involved in a number of other sort of green groups and ventures and charity stuff outside of work. As a lot of people that volunteer will know, you kind of get asked to do more and more, so which is good. But yeah, so I do various bits in and around the area as well. So yeah, next slide, thank you. I just thought I'd give a bit of a background about Croydon Community Energy before I share some of the lessons learned from setting up a community energy group. One of the first things we did as a group before becoming a legal entity and setting up a bank account, etc., was really just to nail down, why are we getting together to do this? Why are we giving up our time? What is our mission in our area? And this was a really, really important step because it allowed everybody to see who aligned with the rest of the group and who didn't. And we had a couple of people drop out at this stage, we had a couple of people join, which is completely normal. And at first I thought, oh god, it's all going to fall apart, but it's as other groups told me as well, people will come and go as the group evolves and people realize it's not for them or they don't have time, etc. So for our group, it was really important to nail down our mission. So it's to implement renewable energy generation and low carbon technologies in the local area to both cut greenhouse gas emissions and energy bills, driven by community ownership and empowerment. We also put a number of goals together which are a bit more fluid, and they will evolve as the group goes on. And I won't read them out, but yeah, that's more of the changing list depending on what stage we're at. So I found that having a mission that we've kind of revisited has been a vital part of the journey. For our first year in numbers, so we became a group officially on the 30th of November 2021. So in that time we got the 7 directors on the board. There are actually 8 now because somebody put themselves forward at our AGM a couple of weeks ago, which is great. So there's now 8 directors, all range of backgrounds, me in energy, a couple of people that know about solar, but then we've got public sector, we've got someone who was a teacher, we've got someone who's in IT. So it's, but by no means restricted to people who know about renewable energy already. That's definitely not a prerequisite. We've got 27 paid members, so people that have paid their £1 to join the cooperative, hoping to get that to 100 by the next year, which would be great. I mean, considering we only managed to get our bank account finally set up in May this year, we're pleased with that. We've got 4 project sites that we're hoping to have in our first round of solar panel installation, hopefully early next year. But as I'm sure many people will know, it's a long old process, especially when the council are involved. So we've got 4 sites that we're really engaged with and hoping that hoping to have. We've run our first well, at the time I wrote this actually for our AGM, we've now done 2 energy advice sessions. So we've gone to events in the community and given energy advice for people, check they're on the right, eligible for the right grants to help them. And some of our grant funding we used to buy things like LED bulbs and radiator bleeding keys and given some of those out. So we've actually run 2 of those now. We've had 30k of grant funding raised from various sources like the London Community Energy Fund, Cooperatives Community Booster Fund, the Royal London Changemakers Programme. So a few bits and pieces, which has been really, really good to help us get going. And we've also had 3 meetings with our local MPs and Croydon Council, who have all expressed support for what we're doing. So it was key that we wanted to meet early with sort of important decision makers in the area as well and get our name out there. Bit of a recap over our first year. So the first thing we did when we became a group was apply for the London Community Energy Fund. I know that the Rural Community Energy Fund has sadly not been continued, but I think there's a few more grants and things coming up that people can apply for. So that's what we did first. December we had our first kind of get together in person. A few people obviously didn't come because of COVID and everything, but yeah, it was nice. It's really important to have those in-person get-togethers as well. January we did our first site visit. So we went to the football club that we're working with and looked at their pitch lights and also their stand to see where solar panels could go. February we had our first sort of strategy session where all the directors came and a few more people, and it was really good to help to just refocus and see what we wanted to do that year. March we had our first stall at a local regular pop-up as the Sustainable Thornton Heath sort of pop-up hubs that they're running, so that was good and good way to start getting out there, building our mailing list, talking to people, etc. April we did a local eco fair as well, so that was good. May, as I said, we started taking on new members, so we finally got our bank account set up, which was a very, very long, convoluted process, as a lot of these administrative things are. And then June we found out we were getting a small amount of money from the Community Shares Booster Fund to help with launching our first community share offer. And then July we did a range of, this is just one photo, but we did a whole number of sort of summer stalls and festivals and things. Had a bit of a break in August. September we found out we were on the Royal London Changemakers Programme, which has been amazing for linking us with people that have been able to sort of help provide some advice to the group. October, we used some of our grant funding to pay for members of our group to do some official training to do fuel energy advice in the community, which is it's not something that every community energy group does, but it's something that's quite a big issue in Croydon, so we thought we would have that as a focus. And then November, that was a photo from our first energy advice session that we did. So, oh yeah, and then that's just thought I'd share some photos of the group. So in terms of some of the do's and don'ts I've picked out, so the first one I put up is around networking, and it's so important to build up a strong network with as many people who will listen to you as possible. You'll need all manner of skills in the group, from project management to dealing with the council, admin to finance, marketing, legal, etc. So even if you create some rudimental flyers to hand out to people, that they can email you, or if they're interested, it's better than nothing, even if you don't feel you're there yet. I mean, it's just great to find people who share a common interest, and lots of people are interested in helping in some way, which is great. Relating to this below, so join as many preferably free membership bodies as you can. A lot of them are free. They have so many great resources out there. I mean, there's one of the biggest ones, Community Energy England. Then you've got Community Energy South, which obviously focuses on the south of the country. And then we've also got Community Energy London, which is all the groups in London. But there's also, our council was offering 1 year's free membership to the Federation of Small Businesses, which we took up. We were just kind of looking out for opportunities like that. Cooperatives UK, you can join, Solar Energy UK. The list goes on. There are lots of really, really great resources out there. And this is all things you can do without even having a project. We haven't actually got our first project up and running yet, but just because of the amount of work and time and money it takes. But there are things you can do in the meantime to help get you to that stage. Research is really, really important, not just for yourself, but just educating the group on what the community energy model is and how it might be relevant in your area. I mean, you're not going to know everything, and you'll learn as you go along, but just having a real handle of what community energy is and how you could implement it in the area will really help. Look to see, has anybody tried to set up a group there before? If yes, and it's failed, what happened? Can you speak to them? I managed to get in touch with a couple of people who tried to set up a group in Croydon back in 2017, and we had a really useful lessons learned session with them, where they just talked about they didn't quite have the right people, or it was the council policy at the time, or whatever it was, and it was just really, really helpful to forming our plan for going forward. So just researching what buildings in the area you could start thinking about reaching out to. Once you've got your group together, I would recommend trying to get a bank account set up as soon as possible so you can start applying for grants. It is quite a long process. You need to decide who's going to be treasurer, secretary, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just so helpful. And even just if to take donations or whatever it is. I think somebody did put in the chat a question about it, but I think I can always answer that in a bit. But yeah, trying to get that set up as soon as possible is I would recommend that. Of course, be prepared for how much hard work and time you will find yourself putting into it. It's there are a huge amount of administrative tasks, decisions, hurdles, and things like that to come. So I think something I tried to do in the group from the beginning was establish a kind of honesty and communication. Try not to let people take on more than they can. I mean, I know it's hard to judge sometimes, but if you just tell people, look, just tell me if you can't help or you've overcommitted, and be honest with yourself as well. I'm guilty for trying to take on too much, but yeah, I think just having a honesty and communication policy in the group is really good. So yeah, it just be prepared. It's in my experience, my limited experience, it's not a quick or particularly easy journey, but worth it. So Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so off the back of kind of what I was just saying, I'd highly recommend not trying to do it alone. As we're setting up any, venture and or anything like that, unless you're, an energy expert with, that's able to spend loads of hours in the day with marketing, finance, legal experience, it will be too big of a task for you, and you run the risk of burning out. I'm sure many people get that who are in the kind of voluntary or that kind of space. So yeah, I would recommend, obviously, it might just be, it was just me on my own that had the idea, but the first thing I did was build up the group that's going to do it with me before I did anything else. So I think that's really key. Your social media presence online is really important, and even having a basic website where people could email you or sign up to a mailing list is key. Even if you've got no experience of setting up a website, I mean, there are brands, I mean, we use Wix, but I know that there are some other brands that you can set up websites for free, or they're quite user friendly, even if you just have your name and what you want to do, just because you can start building up your mailing list even without any projects, just so that when you are ready to finally launch a project or do a call out for support or run your first meeting, you will have a group of people that are interested and want to hear and can share the word, etc. So even having maybe an Instagram account or a Facebook page or something, you should hopefully be able to find somebody that knows how to do these, and there's lots of guides online. So I think having your social media presence is quite important. That nowadays, that's the first thing people do when they they look for you online. They'll look for a website, they'll look for Twitter account or whatever. So I think that's something that is something that's relatively easy to do at the beginning as well. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So this is relating to sites that you're going to work with. So I mean, we had some really promising calls with some sites at the beginning. We had a mosque that was really, they were knocking down and starting again. They wanted solar panels, they wanted this and that, and then they just disappeared. They just went quiet, and it happens. Sites come in and out. So I think the good thing was that we didn't just stop. We didn't just say, right, we've actually got a couple of sites that are interested, let's stop. We kept reaching out to sites and asking people to ask their churches and ask the schools and ask this and that. Because yes, the sites that we're working with now were definitely not the ones we had at the beginning. So create a bit of a pipeline for projects that could be up and coming. And not all of them will be financially viable, or the roof might not be strong. So it's worth just building up a bit of a pipeline. And don't be afraid to get out there, and even if you don't know everything yet. I mean, we started doing stalls before we even became a legal entity, just to chat to people, say, this is what we want to do you want to sign up to our mailing list? Would you be interested in helping run the group? And yeah, and things like that. I mean, we found one of our directors on the board at a local park 100th year birthday celebration thing. So you can cheaply make some flyers or print some out and print off a list of people that can just sign up for a mailing list or something. So it's good to get out there and get the name out there, get people thinking about, oh, what's this? Croydon Community Energy or whatever group it is. I think it's my last slide. Yeah, so most importantly, a bit of an inspirational thing. So you'll spend lots of time getting the group up and running. You'll realize that there's lots of admin to be done. You'll wonder if it's all worth it, and you'll hit stumbling blocks and seemingly pointless red tape when it comes to working out the legal stuff for a site and all this kind of thing. And you don't know, obviously, what you don't know initially. There just seems to be endless amounts of things to learn about. I mean, the energy industry is complex enough as it is, and there's a whole load of legal stuff around. There's a campaign trying to get the local electricity bill through Parliament that will help community energy groups, and yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole of things that you can learn about. But the good news is there are so many grants available to groups. I mean, I've only mentioned a couple that we've been successful with, but there are lots, and groups like Community Energy England have a really comprehensive spreadsheet with all the grants that they find. They put them on there. They tell everybody, it's a real everybody likes to share the news and things like that. So it's a really, really nice community to be a part of. Don't forget, you'll be directly helping your local community by giving them clean, renewable energy, investing profits back into the community via running things like energy advice sessions, or maybe you want to train people how to install solar panels, or, just giving the power back to the people, and money as well is really important. You'll be helping to reduce sites' bills, carbon footprints. You can't underestimate the ripple effect that you will have. The church that we're working with, they want this to be an example, and they want as many people as in their congregation as possible to take some of the tips home with them, and spread the word. So it's anything that starts from the community is always good. And you'll build amazing bonds with like-minded people who care about your area and the planet. And for me, that's been really rewarding, especially with all the doom and gloom of the news and everything that's going on. Just having a group of people who are working towards a common cause is just very refreshing and inspiring. And if you do work at a council or a local authority, please do encourage your constituents to start these groups and support them in whatever way you can, because including my own council, I've heard so many people say that it's just you can't get in touch with anyone, or they don't support, and it's such an easy way to help meet your carbon neutral plans, or whatever you have. But you've got people willing to do some of the work and help decarbonize for you, so why not support them? So I think that's me. If you just flip to the last slide. Yeah, so just any questions. I put some of my contact details. All of the links to the social media pages are on our website as well. But yeah, happy to take any questions. I think a few came through in the chat. So
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Connie. Some really interesting reflections and lessons there. I'm sure really useful for lots of people on the call. Did anyone have any questions for Connie? Do feel free to use the raise hand function to just flag those. I know there were a couple in the chat, Connie. So I saw someone asked if Croydon Community Energy was a legal entity.
Yes, the legal entity we chose was a community benefit society. So we're regulated by the FCA. We actually ran a few sessions, amongst us to work out whether we go to be a charity or a community benefit society or a community interest company, and we just decided that this one was the best for us. So that allowed us to then get a bank account and grant funding.
Great, yeah, thanks, Connie. Yeah, there are different options there, and now on Community Energy England's website in particular, they've got a lot of information on different models to go for, and also funding opportunities, as well as Connie mentioned, as well as just to give a shout out to my colleague George, who sends out the Regen Community Energy newsletter that has funding opportunities in there, and as does Faithful with the National Grid Community Energy newsletter. So do sign up to those as well if you want more information. There was a question in the chat from Damon as well. I know this comes up a lot on, with community energy groups. How do you, are you able to fund staff time, or is it all volunteer led at the moment? And have you got any sort of plans around that moving forward?
Yeah, so as with most groups, it is volunteer led. I do work full time, as do most of the group. One of the grants that we got, so the Royal London Changemakers programme, that was a 20k grant, so quite a bulky one. And within that, you're allowed to pay yourself. Some grants is literally just for feasibility or for capital funding, but this one did allow you to pay yourself. So for some of the hours that I and people in the group spend working on this, we're allowed to, we're able to pay them. Yeah, it is tough at first. It mostly will be running on volunteers and things. So that is one of the tricky things. And yeah, there are some community energy groups who have managed to get full-time staff, and once you've got some solar projects bringing in a steady income, I think it is easier to sort of to do that. But yeah, I mean, ideally I would love to at least move to part-time at my current job and part-time for this or something like that. So
yeah, sure, great. And then there was just another question from Chris, just asking about, I guess, the first project that you're hoping to get set up. I know we've got one of the breakouts talking about sort of local supply models, and energy local, but yeah, just whether that, what project you're looking to get set up first, and how that will physically deliver energy to your community. Although I know that is difficult in terms of actually selling energy
Yeah.
to your community.
Yeah, so we have identified four project sites. So there's a primary school, a community football stadium, and two churches. And for them, we're at the stage where we've done the structural surveys. We've got kind of most of the permissions that we need, and we're also in the stage of doing the legal documents, with help from a pro bono lawyer, which we found through LawWorks, and free templates that legal templates we were given by Pure Leapfrog. So that they are the first four that we're hoping to be in that wave. We've also had help from a couple of other community energy groups who shared their financial model with us. So from that, we've kind of, put our own sites in and worked out what prices we can offer the energy to the sites. So once we've got the panels up and running, most of the energy will be used on site at these four sites, and we're hoping to sell the excess energy back to a company called Unity, who are an energy supplier who buy energy from community energy groups specifically, which seems to be a much better rate than you can export it for the normal mechanism, the smart export guarantee. So the size of the projects in kilowatt hours, altogether it's 300 kilowatts. I can't remember what the exact makeup is. I think it's that we've got one large one which is about 100, 250s, and then or something like that. It's some sort of configuration of, there's four sites and it's 300 altogether. There's a big one, two medium, and one small, whatever it is. But yeah, one of them, we'd probably have to raise the money for all four of them, because the little one wouldn't really be viable on its own. But as part of this kind of basket that we're doing, it will be viable.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Doing sort of several projects at the same time does take away that risk, doesn't it, and make it more feasible. But any final questions for Connie? If not, we'll move on to the breakouts. But yeah, obviously she included their contact details in those slides, which we'll be sending out after the session. So I'm sure you'll be happy for people to get in touch with you if they have any further questions, Connie. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing those lessons with us, and a nice inspirational note to end on a cold Wednesday morning. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Connie. So yeah, now we are going to go into breakout groups for about half an hour or so. So as I mentioned, when you all signed up, we just asked you to pick a topic that you'd like to discuss, and then we've split those out of the four most common ones that you all split those into four topics. So hopefully there's something in there that you want to talk about, and yeah, hopefully those discussions suit your interests. So we've got local supply, which I'm delighted that we're joined by Amy from Energy Local, who's going to talk a little bit about their model, and then Prina is going to be in that session as well to help us discuss other models that are out there as well. We've got Gordon from Pomona Solar, who've also been working with Big Solar Co-op, who's going to be in the breakout on solar with me as well. So yeah, looking forward to that discussion. And then in the breakout group on fuel poverty and energy efficiency, we've got Ellie from National Grid Social Obligations team. So they do a lot of work in supporting vulnerable customers, supporting people doing energy advice, energy efficiency work. So she can talk about some of the ways that the community groups can work with National Grid on those things, as well as, discussing other sort of energy efficiency projects that you've been doing. And that'll be with George, and then my colleague Poppy, who's Regen's head of cities and regions, is going to be in the breakout talking about partnering with local authorities. So obviously that's something that Connie was discussing as well. That relationship with your local council is key. So we want to talk a little bit more about that. Really pleased that we've got quite a few local councils on the call today, as well as community groups. So yeah, in just a moment, Emma is going to put us all automatically into those breakouts. So yeah, it's your chance to ask the questions you want to, and then also give us your thoughts on how you'd like National Grid to support you in each of those ways. So yeah, we'll go into breakouts now and then come back into the main session in about half an hour. As long as Cian is back with us, I will now hand over to Cian, who is National Grid's Connections Strategy Engineer, who's going to talk us through network connections, overcoming some of the barriers that I know were talked about in my breakout session, to securing connections, and as also mentioned, or on some of the changes that are coming from next April to be aware of. So yeah, over to you, Cian.
Yeah, cheers, Kai. I might have to put myself on, turn the video off if the connection's a bit dodgy, but can you hear me? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
There we are. That's no problem then. So just a quick introduction. My name's Cian Rowlands. I guess you're probably all wondering how to pronounce my first name as well. Yeah, it is Cian. It is Welsh. So what I'll run through today is just how we at sort of National Grid are looking to overcome sort of barriers that community energy face, local authorities face, and customers more generally face in connecting to the network, really, and the work that we're doing, especially over the next 5 years, to support customers in connecting to the network. Obviously, I've just noticed as well that says November, but we are in December, so yeah, apologies for that. So we go to the next slide. So just a brief update. So I'm not sure how many people on this call sort of deal with us regularly, but we've rebranded from what was formerly Western Power Distribution to National Grid. So you see the branding now on the website, social media, publications, etc. So although we've changed our name, our contact details and the service that customers have come to sort of expect from Western Power Distribution remains the same. Still responsible for keeping you connected, still responsible to providing you the electricity, making sure the lights stay on, and of course facilitating new connections as well. But what's really exciting now is being part of National Grid. We're now the largest electricity transmission and distribution business in the UK, and that really does put us at the heart of the sort of energy transition, which is really, really exciting, and something we're sort of looking forward to getting stuck into as well. So on the next slide, just a brief introduction about who we are more generally, in case some of you on the call sort of aren't aware of what we do and things like that. So as I mentioned, we're now part of the largest electricity transmission and distribution business in the UK, which is really exciting. We distribute power to roughly 8 million homes and businesses, which covers the East and West Midlands, South Wales and South West England. And sort of moving forward now, as we are sort of key facilitators in net zero in the UK, our vision to enable that is really key. But what we need to ensure is that we do that whilst maintaining a safe network and that it's reliable, so that when you turn the lights on, the electricity is there and it's available. So we need to do that by, maintaining that customer service that we've always offered, and ensuring that customers can connect when they want it, and that we continue to maintain the network as well going forward. So yeah, so traditionally we had 4 core tasks really. So as I mentioned, we keep the power flowing, maintain the equipment, connect customers, and we fix the network. So 24/7, 365 days a year. If a tree falls onto an overhead line, if there's a big storm, which we've seen a couple in the past year, we've got people that go out, fix the network to get people back on supply as soon as possible. And our field teams do a really, really excellent job at that. But what we've seen more recently going forward is we now need to operate a smart system. So that's something we've never really seen before. So if we pop onto the next slide, what we traditionally used to see was energy being generated from a big coal plant or gas turbines and things. These would be then transmitted on the National Grid transmission network, which I guess you could say are like motorways. This comes then onto our distribution network. So I guess we're the sort of A roads and B roads that go through towns and cities. And we distribute that electricity to people's front doors. So that used to be quite a simple model. We used to put cables in the ground, build big substations, and get the electricity to people's houses and businesses. But over the last decade or so, what we've seen is a huge growth in low carbon generation and storage, which of course is fantastic, the fact that it's low carbon, but that's been connected into our network, which is not something we traditionally used to see. So now we have to operate a smart system to be able to understand where the power is flowing, how it's flowing, where it's coming from, where it's going to, and to sort of understand where the pinch points are on the network that we never used to need to worry about in the past. So going on to the next slide then. What we traditionally saw in, back in 1997, I think this might actually be 2007, but those are our 4 areas. And as you can see, I think there's a few tiny wind sites dotted around, maybe some gas turbines or whatever, or diesel generators and things dotted around for backup supplies and whatever. But there's nothing in terms of generation really connected to our network. And then we fast forward to 2017 on the next slide. And yeah, as you can see, it's an explosion of generation, which even from 2017 until now has continued to grow quite dramatically. But there we can see PV, wind, energy storage, and again a lot more other variations of generation as well. So it's really something that we've never had to manage before, and it is now dominating the peak power flows on the network. So it's how we model our networks going forward to ensure that customers can continue to connect, and that we design the network to make sure that connection costs are fair and the system is resilient, and that we can obviously incorporate all these low carbon generation technologies to facilitate net zero. So on to the next slide. So the way we're going to do this for the next 5 years at least, we're going to set the trend. So our business plan has been submitted and we've had final determination last week. So this is called RIIO-ED2. So this is a business plan that we submit to Ofgem to let them know what we're doing, what we're committed to doing. So there's over 42 ambitious sort of commitments that we said we're going to achieve by 2028. And that business plan was a value of £6.7 billion. There's a huge amount of investment in the network, huge amount in digitalization. So having that sort of view and visibility of the network is really key to managing it and enabling connections going forward. And that's essentially, a really, really good view of what we're going to do in the next 5 years, which is key for us and obviously key for customers, as you can access that publicly on our website to be able to see sort of what we're planning to do and how we can support, community energy connections and various other situations. So on the next slide, what we see is that we have 4 focus areas within that business plan around sustainability, connectability, vulnerability, and affordability. So obviously these 4 areas are really, really key in the energy transition. So just a few highlights from the plan. We're planning to be net zero by 2028, which is really key. Obviously, if we're going to facilitate decarbonisation, we need to lead the way, so why wouldn't we try and be a net zero business so that we can lead and be an example for customers across the UK. We're preparing for over 1.5 million electric vehicles and 600,000 heat pumps in our area by 2028. What we'll be doing is offering a same-day connections response for low carbon technologies. So if you wanted to connect an EV charger, heat pump, solar panels and whatnot on your homes, your businesses, we'll get you a response in the same day. So that helps drive your project along rather than delay the project. To help vulnerable customers, we'll be providing 600,000 smart energy action plans every year to support them. And we're going to do all these sort of brilliant initiatives whilst also achieving the lowest ever power cut levels that we've seen on our network. So it's a really ambitious plan. It's been driven by stakeholders, which I think is really, really important. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting it underway in April. So in terms of facilitating connections, so a few highlights from the business plan that we're looking to carry out in the next 5 years is obviously to create an online connections portal to make it easier for customers to access the network, to automate those connections. This will reduce lead times for customers, which also then frees up network planners for important studies for things like reinforcement, so that we can plan ahead of need, so that when customers need to connect, the capacity is there. We'll also be incorporating access SCR methodologies, which I'll touch on next, and continue to sort of support customers with community energy workshops, connection surgeries, where you can contact planners and have a meeting with them to discuss connection possibilities, connections workshops that we carry out with stakeholders, and of course connections customer steering group as well. So the various different ways that we can support customers, and of course we're always at the other end of the phone as well if you need anything. So just on the next slide, so what I'll touch upon here is access SCR. So I think I saw a question pop up then about reinforcement costs as of April the 1st, so 2023. So what Ofgem have carried out is a significant code review. So this is a way in which Ofgem reviews industry codes and speeds up reforms and changes. So the access SCR covered the changes to connection charges, specifically around reinforcement. So what they've said, and they've made a decision on this, and this is being implemented from the 1st of April 2023, is that for demand connections, so for example, your bank of EV chargers in a car park, we will fully fund reinforcement and we will recover that cost through our distribution use of system tariff. So the person connecting to the network, we can distribute that cost and you won't have to pay reinforcement. And for generation customers, the customer will only contribute to reinforcement at the same voltage level at the point of connection. So the reinforcement cost will be reduced for a lot of customers connecting generation as well. So I think that the purpose of this is that we can now support the reinforcement of the network ahead of need. We can plan reinforcement to release capacity in areas where we know generation and demand is going to grow, so that when a customer does come to connect, they haven't got that reinforcement cost to bear, which is also a deal breaker for most projects a lot of the time. And also the capacity is already there, so they haven't got those lead times. So just a bit on the bottom there, if we can't provide the full capacity at the point of application, what we'll offer as well then is a curtailed offer. So we'll say you have to turn off these certain times, and that will give you a date that you can fully connect. So on the next slide, I've touched upon some of this already. So to make it easier to reinforce the grid for customers, it helps facilitate net zero, and it transforms the way in which the costs with new connections are charged and how that access is managed to help support sort of net zero going forward. So for us, throughout the next 5 years, we need to really update our systems and processes, train staff. We need to deliver new connections with these new processes. So we need to make sure from the 1st of April they work. And we also need to monitor that curtailment. So when we offer you a connection and we offer you a curtailed connection, we need to make sure that we give you a figure of curtailment at the start. That is what you're actually going to expect once you've connected. And as I mentioned, 1st of April is when this all goes live. So just a quick outlook of how this might help. So this is Aberdare primary substation. So it's quite traditional. We see a peak at about 6 o'clock in the evening where people come home, switch on their kettles and whatnot. And this is quite standard across the UK. But on the next slide, what we can see is by 2030, we're predicting this demand to grow, the peak demand to grow by 85%. But also more importantly, the peak's going to change for Aberdare, and we're going to see that peak at about 7 o'clock in the morning. So what we really need to do to make sure that we reinforce the network where needed is to predict and project demand growth at these areas, and we can then invest in reinforcement in those areas to make sure that when customers come to connect, we know that the capacity is available for them, and Access SCR helps us to do this. Another way in which we're supporting connections and reinforcement going forward is through creating a distribution system operator function. So this has now been created under a different directorate. So the business is still the same legal business, but it's under a different directorate. And what the DSO will do is obviously the projections I just mentioned now about that primary substation. So to analyze what the network's going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and come up with new and smarter network solutions, offer flexible connections, and of course then flexibility. So for example, incentivizing customers to turn down their generation or demand at certain times of the day. Now, DSO is required because obviously in the next 30 years, as I showed earlier, the growth in distributed generation, the way the network's going to look is going to be completely different. We're going to see domestic heat being electrified, transport being electrified, the electricity generation mix being connected to our network. So how load growth is going to look is really, really important to how we can invest in the network. And rather than reinforcement being driven by individual connections, we can then predict where the network's going, how it's going to look, and then putting a real focus on planning for the future, not planning for now. So we'll still have a DNO. So the DNO will still operate like it does now. So build a smart and flexible network, provide quality and accurate data on network loading and assets, and obviously keep the lights on, which is of course probably paramount, you know. And then the DSO then will, you know, assess and size new capacity required for current and future needs, make decisions on how to create that capacity. Do we build bigger cables in the ground, or do we request flexibility? And also then develop the markets for those flexibility opportunities so that customers UK-wide can get involved and can participate in those flexibility markets. Part of how they'll do this is through planning and network development, so scenario planning that I've touched upon, optioneering, so what's more cost effective and cost beneficial to the customer, through network operation by monitoring the network, understanding where that electricity is flowing and how it might develop in future, and how do we manage that energy. And then of course then, as I touched upon there, market development, so how can we develop those platforms to ensure accessibility for our customers to be able to participate in those markets for flexibility as well. And the DSO, I think, will benefit customers and of course benefit new connections, because it allows us to plan the network more efficiently, allows us to plan it more economically, and of course it makes a more coordinated approach between not just who's connecting today, but who might be connecting in 10 years' time. By providing that capacity ahead of time, look to reduce delays for new connections. And it also offers opportunities then for customers, as I've mentioned, to get involved in flexibility services, which provides a benefit for both National Grid and to our customers as well. So just to quickly conclude then, so obviously sustainability, connectability, vulnerability and affordability remain our 4 focus areas that our stakeholders want us to look at. So we're investing in infrastructure to enable the transition to net zero, whether that be monitoring the network or reinforcing the network. One of our commitments is to not be a barrier to connections. So if a customer wants to connect a low carbon technology to the network, be that a heat pump or an EV charger, we will make sure that they can do that. By 2028, we want to be a net zero business, lead the way for our customers. You know, put your money where your mouth is, which you know, I quite like myself. And of course, then continue to develop that smart and flexible energy system to make sure that we can build that capacity ahead of need and make sure we invest customer money as appropriately and as effectively as possible. So that wraps it up for me. I've seen quite a lot of questions pop up, so sorry that went on a bit longer than I'd hoped, but hopefully we've got some time, Kai, for questions, if that's all right.
Yeah. Cheers, Cian. Yeah, loads of interesting stuff in there, as I'm sure you can tell from the amount of questions.
Yeah,
so
quite a few popping up there.
Yeah. So if anyone else has a question for Cian as we're going through, do put your hand up. But just picking on some of the ones in the chat. So there's been a few around. I think I've heard this term used, like a capacity grab. So, you know, I know particularly for community projects, they're concerned, you know, will the changes from the 1st of April lead to a lot of commercial developers rushing in and effectively reserving that capacity on the network, so that pushes community projects to the back of the queue. And then also a sort of a related question on what about the projects that have, you know, reserved capacity for a number of years and they're sort of holding everyone up in the queue. So sort of, yeah, related questions, you know, capacity grabs and then capacity that's also reserved.
Yeah.
You know, how will you sort of work on those bits?
Yeah, both really interesting questions, good questions, I think, that we definitely need to address. I think first of all, relating to capacity grab, I don't know if Faithful might have anything more to say on this from a community energy standpoint, but it's definitely something that we're aware of. So our processes at the minute we're assessing, are people putting off applying for connections now until the 1st of April? And are we expecting a bow wave on the 1st of April? We don't know. I don't think so. But we need to make sure we assess that to make sure customers have full transparency of what the likely changes are going to be. I think it's important to understand that changes will affect some customers in terms of costs. So it won't save money for all customers, but for some it might. So what we're hoping to do before April is to offer multi-option offers. So the customer will have full transparency on, what their costs might look like now and what they might look like in future. The only issue with that is if that capacity is taken up between that time and April, it might impact their costs down the line. So it is a risk. The second part of that question on sort of how do we manage the pipeline of connections, that's work that's actively being undertaken by myself and a working group at the minute. So yeah, that's right. There's a lot of customers in the pipeline. How do we know if they're progressing their projects or they're not just sitting on capacity that other people can utilize for, especially for renewable projects? Well, we have a queue management system. So obviously customers come in the queue first come, first serve basis. But then in those offers, customers will have milestones. So for example, applying for planning permission, having planning permission granted, and so on. If the customer isn't achieving those milestones, then we will write to them for the evidence. And if they can't evidence it, then we have the capability to remove them from the queue to free up that capacity. To date, I'll be honest, we haven't been very good at that, but that's something I'm actively working on at the minute to improve.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, very reassuring that you're working on that at the moment.
Trying.
That's good to know. Yeah, sorry, Faithful, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make was we are making all these efforts to try and accommodate all connections, whether it's demand or even community-based projects. The only problem at the moment, which I see and which frustrates me personally, is that in terms of the categorization of a generator, it doesn't distinguish or segregate between a community energy group or a large-scale developer. I wish that at some point in the near future, that could be relaxed for community energy groups, because I think they are in the business to serve communities, and I think that's where if we are to allow community energy groups to connect, I think that can potentially go a long way in ensuring that we achieve the net zero agenda that we are set to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Faithful. I think that's a really, really useful point, and hopefully one that you can take along to Ofgem and encourage them to agree to that. So yeah, we did. Sorry, Gordon, I can see you've got your hand up as well. Was that related to the question that you had in the chat?
No, it's somewhat additional and quite important, I think, because it's great the local DNO changes that we were discussing, and I think that's excellent, and the changes from April the 1st are well received. But what I'm experiencing at the moment in 3 different locations across the 3 counties that I'm dealing with is a delay for the upgrade to the national grid. To the DNO's responsibility, and the timescales for that upgrade are presently being given 2032 to 2036, and that's a showstopper, and that means that we can't do a lot of the things that we're trying to do. I mean, there's projects at the moment for businesses that want to. It's not community energy, but it could be, and they want to add another 1 megawatt, and they can't because of I think it's fault headroom is the issue, and this won't be resolved until 2032. So that's some reality. I'm just trying to inject a little bit of reality into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. We're seeing a lot of connections now, especially larger connections, who are then, able to connect to our network, but then they require a project progression onto the transmission network, and then they're coming back and saying, 2036, which is obviously really frustrating especially if, like you said, you're adding 1 megawatt of generation. So I think essentially from the transmission point of view, they've never been used to volume. For example, if you're connecting a nuclear power plant, it's going to take decades. They can go, we'll start building the electricity network in 5-10 years. Comes around, they go, okay, we've got 10 years, and they'll still build it ahead of that nuclear power plant. What transmission is seeing now are connections going, we want to connect, but in 3 years. And transmission don't have land rights. They don't have, the infrastructure that they need to build. And of course, they don't have the staff for that volume. So they're definitely on a transition piece with that. I think a bit of work that I'm actively involved with them at the minute is how they can scrutinize, like the question that came up previously, their connections so that they don't have customers taking up large quantity of capacity in the queue. And we're talking gigawatts, 20, 30 gigawatt connections that might not have any intention of actually connecting. So, being part of the grid group is fantastic because we can open these communication channels. They can learn from us as we can from them. So yeah, Gordon, you're spot on. It's a shame, but it is happening. But we're hoping that as they learn from us in terms of how to connect volumes of customers, of course our customers are a lot smaller, but they can sort of develop on those processes to kind of expedite connections and of course kick people out the queue that aren't actually planning to connect.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Cian. I think that's a good point. A lot of the time it is around queue management. Steve, I know you've got your hands up, but we are just slightly pushed for time. Because ask you if you want to just put your question in the chat.
No, can I make it very quickly?
Because
we are really, there's a lot of us who are non-technical here, and I do appreciate Cian's presentation, but some of the language is quite impenetrable. We need plain English. I mean, curtailment, reinforcement, and all the acronyms you're using. Please, can we make it a little clearer?
That is very much noted, Steve. We will. I mean that's something that we can work on definitely with in Faithful's role as the community energy engineer, sort of helping make sense of all of these changes. I know it is a lot to take on board. So yeah, we can definitely look at how
hold my hand up to that, Steve. No, I appreciate the feedback, and I can edit the slides that can then be circulated at a later time if that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks. I know that is also something Faithful's looking at, how to make sure all these changes are accessible for community energy groups. I know we did get a few other questions in the chat, which if Cian doesn't mind, I might just ask him to take away and just pick up on later. I know Dan, that you had a specific question on a bit of a demand connection that you were making, and there were other questions specifically on domestic generation connections and solar farms as well. So the people that asked those, we will pick up on those afterwards. And if anyone else had any other questions that they'd like Cian to pick up on afterwards, do feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll get back to you. But yeah, thanks very much for sharing that with us, Cian. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.